How about a modified stock watch? We're not going to do it again. It's the midseason point. We already did that last week, but there are some players for Ohio State that you need to keep an eye on heading into Saturday. The Buckeyes are a little bit banged up, certainly more than they were heading out to Oregon as they get ready for Nebraska on Saturday. So let's dive into some guys that we need to watch for Ohio State with a Wednesday modified stock watch on the Podcast Daily. That's Bill Landis and Jeremy Birmingham. I'm Austin Ward. And Bill, it starts on the offensive line, and you're the guru.
It must start on the offensive line. I don't know if you know this, but that's where games are won and lost.
Is that correct?
Is along the line of scrimmage.
Oh.
And as we've talked about a couple times already, like this is the real test is going to come in 2 weeks when they got to go on the road at Penn State. But this will be a nice ramp up to that because Nebraska, I think, has good defense. A lot of confidence in Zen Mahalski. We're talking to people on Tuesday from Ryan Day and from Will Howard. Will Howard said he thinks that Zen is a guy who'd be starting at a lot of other Power 5 programs if he had decided to leave Ohio State instead of be here for his fourth year. Like, he's a big, pretty athletic dude. Like, I certainly got the projection with him when they brought him in. Mm-hmm. And he has not had a lot of opportunity to show what he can do yet. I think there are, I guess, reasonable assumptions made about players when they're this far into their career and have not cracked the starting lineup just yet. But that does not mean that they can't do the job when they're called upon. And now Zen is being called upon. It'll be interesting to see how they try to help him with tight ends or running backs or whatever that might be schematically with some of the play calls from Chip Kelly. But I thought, like, I've gone a little back and forth on what I thought about Zen in the Oregon game. From a run blocking perspective, I thought it was pretty good. There were definitely some pass blocking miscues, but Ohio State kind of lived to tell about them. And not every play is perfect, and you have to kind of work your way around those things. So I guess I'm just, like, excited and curious to see how it goes. I'm not going to, like, offer an analysis on what I think is going to happen before I see it. So it's a huge spot for them. Obviously, it is. Their best offensive lineman is now not able to play this year. So I'm not trying to sugarcoat that and say, like, oh, it's fine, they'll be good. But I don't know. They're projecting belief in Zen, so I guess I'll give them the benefit of the doubt and see what it looks like.
Ryan Day did remove the probably or likely from that equation. Josh Simmons is out for the year with a knee injury.
Yeah, and I mean, that's what we all pretty much expected. I mean, Ryan Day doesn't normally go out after a game and say, well, this player looks to be out for quite some time. I mean, he said he doesn't look good coming back for this season. That's pretty definitive from Ryan Day as far as Ryan Day goes. Obviously a ton of talk about Josh Simmons and losing him and what that means to the offensive line. Will Kazmarek, who has been somewhat underutilized, I guess, in the passing game as the Buckeyes have found other receivers who they actually should throw the ball to, like Emeka Egbuka and Jeremiah Smith. But when you lose Will Kazmarek, you're losing an extra layer of protection on the offensive line. And that's where I think Bennett Christian is a guy who most folks probably have looked past his potential contribution to this program. Even since he got here, he was highly recruited, but he wasn't like recruited by Georgia and Bama and stuff when he came out of Georgia. Bennett Christian, if you ask people around this building, like, what do you think about Bennett Christian? Their eyes light up. They get very like, we love this kid. He's doing everything right. Ryan Day on Tuesday was talking about him as a pass catcher, what he's done in the route game. That kid is going to be pretty important, and there's going to be a small smattering of the fan base, I would imagine, that, why not Jelani Thurman? Like, I don't know, but I know that the obvious first decision at Oregon when Kazmarek went out was to put Bennett Christian in. He played most snaps he's played all season out in Eugene, played pretty well. And I think sometimes when you're a young man who's had something taken away from you for a bit, like Bennett Christian had his second season at Ohio State taken away from him because of a mistake he made, I think it means more. And you can see someone who is completely bought in. And it's my expectation that he's not just going to be playing more than people thought, but that he is a clear-cut second tight end for Ohio State moving forward alongside G. Scott. So big moment for him, big moment for Jelani Thurman, as we talked about heading out of the Oregon game. Like, you got to figure out how bad you want this. And I don't think there's any question about how bad Bennett Christian wants it.
Yeah, at first blush, it still doesn't seem to me like Bennett Christian could be a major factor in the middle of the field or as a receiving threat. Now, maybe that's discounting. We saw him get in the open field and score that touchdown early in the year, getting it from Julian Sayin. That's a little bit different when the backups are on the field, but he certainly showed good speed, and Ohio State has trusted him in some big moments already this season, even when Will Kazmarek was healthy. So maybe he can do the things. Maybe he can run that sort of seam route the same way we saw Will Kazmarek attack Oregon on that first drive of the game before he, injured his upper body there. And it doesn't sound like he's definitely out for the year. I'm not really sure about the timeline on that at this point, but it's not going to be against Nebraska or Penn State.
Yeah, I mean, Ryan Day said they could play 10 more games. So, I mean,
yeah, so I don't know, but
you could have him in the playoffs.
Certainly in the meantime, they need Bennett Christian to do the things that Will Kazmarek was doing, because even when they broached the conversation, and Ryan Day specifically talking about Jelani Thurman, it does not feel like there's a ton of confidence still that he is ready to take on the all-purpose, all-around tight end responsibilities that they would need from someone in that spot.
Yeah, they told us that with their rotations at tight end, right? The thing that maybe caught my ear most about Ryan Day talking specifically about the tight ends was that they had felt like it was time for Bennett Christian to start playing more anyway, and now they have to play him because Will Kazmarek's out. Bennett's always been a guy that I've been pretty high on. I liked his profile coming out of high school because he was blocking so much already, which
very rare.
High school tight ends don't do, or at least high profile high school tight ends.
The Jeremy Ruckert route.
Yeah, they just play receiver usually.
His high school basically ran a wing T, and he was the only guy that ever caught the ball.
Yeah,
but he was also a really, really good blocker.
Yeah, and I think that's shown up a little bit in the amount that he's played. I even go back to him sort of owning the mistake last year with was it PEDs? I guess was the
over the counter.
Oh yeah.
GNC, don't shop at GNC.
Don't shop at GNC unless they want to sponsor the show. Then you can shop there all you want. I just think he's pretty mature because of that, and physically, I think up to the task of what Ohio State wants its tight ends to do. What's his receiving upside? I don't know. I honestly don't even care that much, because they need somebody out there who can be a reliable blocker, and I think Bennett might be up to the task.
I don't think if you gave him the same offensive workload that Luke Farrell had, I don't think he's discernibly different as a pass catcher than Luke Farrell was.
Okay.
And the reality is you're going to need to use him sparingly in the passing game, but if you are using him, it's in the red zone, it's in the in the corner, the corner routes, stuff like that, or you just want to get him in there and box someone out and use his 6'6", 270-pound frame to. He's got skills, and I don't think we've talked about him enough because people are waiting for Jelani Thurman to emerge and be that guy, and it's just, I don't know that that's going to happen this season.
I guess I know better than to evaluate the tight end usage based on targets in this offense anyway. What am I thinking?
I mean, they did weaponize G against Oregon. They were designing plays specifically for the ball to go to him, and he answered.
I do think, in terms of guys who are going to have to step up, and that's the theme of the podcast daily today, is if you haven't picked it up, the injury spots that Ohio State has to address. G. Scott was already doing that, and I think he deserves credit for that. I think Keenan Bailey's done a nice job building the depth of that room. To your point, Berm, there is a hyper focus on Jelani Thurman and why he has not elevated at this point of his career. If that's where all the attention goes, I think maybe you're missing, and
the
it's
forest
a straw
for the
man,
trees.
the other elevation and the depth in that room. Even Patrick Gerd is someone that Ohio State has not been hesitant to put out on the field even a year ago. They have options there, I think, that they can get through. It's not the same as what Will Kazmarek was going to provide.
You certainly don't want to make an entire argument based on what you saw in an emergency situation at Oregon. But Jelani Thurman had 2 snaps and Bennett Christian had 20.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen in that scenario unless there's a lot of trust in what Bennett Christian is bringing to the field.
Do you think we see them dust off the Bison package now? We haven't seen it yet. When Ryan Day was asked about it, he basically said, we haven't really done it because we like our tight ends, and now they're short one.
Well, there were times when they were running 4 tight ends out there, so you still conceivably could do that with Jelani and Patrick Gerd, and Max LeBlanc lost his black stripe last week, but that seems unlikely for him to be the guy. So if you have guys like Luke Montgomery who are big athletic kids,
or Austin Sarabeld,
it feels like
I go that route.
Feels like Chip Kelly's answer to that is the full house backfield and the T formation.
I don't think, I when it was asked about a couple weeks ago, I went and looked at some UCLA stuff, and I don't really know that he ever did it, put a bonus 6th offensive lineman out there. Now, did they have one to put out there at UCLA? I think maybe that's the better question, but
And they ran that full house off against the Oregon, one play, and it was Patrick Gurd between
2 times.
They ran it twice.
In the red zone, and they ran it on a 3rd down or 4th down. But it was Patrick Gurd both times.
Yeah. So I feel like that's based on what we've seen through 6 games. It seems as if that's what Chip Kelly would rather do rather than a 6th offensive lineman. Now that could change.
I think you're right. Yeah.
We'll see. But that you still have to keep an eye as well, not just at left tackle, but Tiger Shabola came in and out of that game. We've seen Austin Serveld go in. So I don't know that we have to cover a ton of ground with what's going on there because both have played at a pretty decent level. Quinshon Judkins, Ryan Day says he's feeling better. The hand was not to blame, he said, for the fumble at Oregon. I doubt that it helped, but he had the procedure a week ago.
I just think a 6'5", 350-pound defensive tackle ripping the ball out of your hand, sometimes that dude might be a little stronger.
Well, yeah, and he also had one hand on the ball. Like if you watch the
if you're
TV
hitting the
copy,
backfield, you should probably.
If you watch the TV copy, there's a shot of Carlos Laughlin talking to Quinshon Judkins about putting 2 hands on the ball.
Yeah, if you're getting hit in the backfield 2 yards deep, you should probably.
I'm not saying it was the cause. I'm just saying it probably didn't help.
Certainly didn't help.
He definitely looked like he had some kind of brace on his hand. Yeah, under his glove.
Yeah, it was weird because the glove fit right over it. Berm and I were both
we were watching it
trying to figure it out.
It was just like a tape or like a splint almost.
Yeah.
But anyway,
either way, he had a procedure and he's fine now.
He's not going to miss any time.
But do you guys feel like there's a need for more of James Peoples, or is it because this isn't a workload issue for Quinshon or Travion or anyone else? So, like, if Quinshon had the procedure and he's good to go, then who cares? Or do you go into the Nebraska week saying maybe we let James Peoples go a little bit because Nebraska shouldn't?
I think you hope you get up by enough points that you maybe pull Quinshon out of the game earlier and play James Peoples more. But I think to start the game, they'll go in with the plan they've always had.
I don't think you have to sacrifice anything in high leverage situations just because of concern about that. He played through the hand injury. He still played outside of the fumble pretty well by normal standards. If he got that cleaned up and Ryan Day says he's feeling better now than before the Oregon game, then so be it. There's only one football. We talk about that all the time. I don't know that there's an issue with the running game. I don't know that I'm concerned about the running game. Travion and Quinshon have got through this game through 6 games without a heavy workload on their shoulders, and now Ohio State has to win the next 6 games no matter what. So I agree with Bill. Like if you get up, maybe you pull them out quicker. I don't know that you have to put a third running back into the equation in the first quarter or second quarter necessarily.
Fair.
Okay.
Let's move to the defense.
Defense. We don't know a timeline on Lathan Ransom.
We don't even know if he's hurt. We have a pretty good idea.
We suspect that there is a possibility that Lathan Ransom could be dealing with something on a day-to-day basis. Mm-hmm. And we're all, at the end of the day, day-to-day.
That's right. Try to be.
I feel like Jordan Hancock is more likely than not to be playing at safety for Ohio State this week. Do you agree, Berm?
I do, but I was also interested by Ryan Day's answer on Tuesday because he was asked pretty directly, like, what happens next at safety, and he immediately went down the list, starting with Jalen McClain and other guys.
Jalen McClain.
And I wonder if, against Nebraska specifically, if you think you are doing yourself a disservice by taking Jordan Hancock out of the slot, because I don't think Nebraska is going to get over the top that often against you, at least not from what I saw against Indiana. They did not seem to be interested in pushing the ball down the field. And Dylan Raiola, like they try to keep him protected and keep him in the intermediate passing game so as to not put too much on his plate. I almost think that Jalen McClain makes more sense there this week. Nebraska runs a lot of 2 tight end, a lot of 12 personnel. I think if you have Jordan Hancock out there and handling the middle field and the flats and stuff, I think it makes more sense.
Yeah, I don't know. I could kind of go either way on it. Like I like having the experience out there. I do think they're going to play. Let's talk about on Tuesday morning, like a fair amount of 4-3 in this game, so that kind of removes the nickel position and replaces it with the Sam. I would guess that it's Jordan Hancock, and that maybe Jordan Hancock will play whatever the adjuster, and Caleb Downs might move to the bandit so that he's maybe involved in the run fits a little more than Jordan Hancock would be. I wouldn't mind seeing Jalen McClain play. Like I like him. I think he's a pretty promising young player, but as you're trying to adjust things on defense and you're angry about how you played last time, does that give you then any reluctance to toss out a freshman when you're trying to put your best foot forward?
Well, let's read the tea leaves like we always do. Is the fact that Jalen McClain's name came up before Malik Hartford any kind of indication? I
Yes,
was sitting there.
To me, it is.
Yeah, I think so. I'm thinking back
Ryan Day
to
could just be a stickler for the alphabet.
could be. Yeah. Well,
Probably not, though.
Hartford, McLean.
Jalen.
Can go either way.
Okay, well, I guess we don't know. That's why we're trying to read the tea leaves. Both Jim Knowles and Ryan Day dating back to the start of training camp, and I was sitting there thinking about that with safety, and Dan Hope ultimately asked the question about Jordan Hancock. That was on my mind. I wanted to maybe talk about that more than Nick Saban's analysis of Ohio State's defense. I don't know if that's. I'm just really confused by the way they would handle that, and you have to have Jordan Hancock on the field for me.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you're running 4-3 stuff, then fine. If you're going to go out there and run your normal 4-2-5 base, I think I would keep Jordan Hancock in the slot because Nebraska's best receiving options, I think, are their tight ends. And I'm still not entirely sold on Sonny Styles and Arvell Reese in coverage, where I feel more comfortable. But I do think the beauty of Caleb Downs is that you're in a position where you can put someone maybe a little more green, a little less experienced back there with him and feel confident that, okay, Caleb's got this, so we can let Jordan do what Jordan does in the slot. And Jordan, I mean, if we're calling a spade, I don't know that he's played particularly well the last month or so as it is. And I don't know if you want to jumble things up with him,
I think
as it were. But
to go back to what I was trying to get to with, they've since the start of training camp been talking about safety depth and that being one of their primary concerns. And, what does that mean? Jalen McLean made a bunch of plays when we were in there for training camp. I thought maybe a healthy version of Malik Hartford would resume the ascent. Maybe that's not happening to the level that I would have projected or Ohio State, Matt Guerreri and Jim Knowles or anybody else. If that's, I guess we're going to find out on Saturday. Mm-hmm. If they go out there and Jalen McLean and Malik Hartford split those reps and they're not worried about to what Berm's talking about and you don't have to move Jordan Hancock or it's better to just let him play the nickel, I guess we'll get an answer on how they really feel because it's not a surprise to me that they wouldn't directly answer that on a Tuesday.
They put Malik Hartford out there last year as a starter in early part of the season, didn't play particularly
for
well,
a drive,
and then changed it immediately.
Yeah.
If something doesn't look right, I think you can adjust. But you have to start preparing for life beyond Lathan Ransom anyway.
What about Keenan Nelson?
I've not heard anything that would indicate he's ready to be that guy for this team. But,
he's older.
And we thought at times in practice that Jaden Bonsu was doing some nice things.
Yeah. He's certainly more like Lathan Ransom in the style of play. Yeah. So
I think he's appeared on the availability report. Maybe that was early in the year, but
he was at Oregon though. So I mean, he was
traveling. Wasn't on the last one. Yeah, I guess it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, because who cares about that? Yeah. But I mean, I think by far the intrigue about the severity for Lathan Ransom or confirming that there is an injury at all is the most interesting thing that's going on for Ohio State this week because even though we start, I felt like we should start with the offense because all of the rest of the conversation for the previous 10 days has been about the defense. Like, I think that Ohio State's offense with Bennett Christian that we talked about, with maybe some encouraging signs for Zen Mahalski, I'm not really concerned about Ohio State's ability to score. I think if you take Lathan Ransom off this team for any conceivable amount of time and primarily thinking ahead to Penn State, Indiana, which is just, I'm still going to take some time getting used to that.
It is weird to lump them in.
That's going to be the issue. We saw what happened to Ohio State down the stretch when Lathan was removed from the equation. And I don't know if it's that length. It doesn't sound like it is, but that I think would dramatically change the picture.
We didn't think it was that length last year
of course
either.
Not,
so I mean, that's the reality. We don't know. And unfortunately, this isn't the NFL where they're mandated to tell us the truth about it. But the simple,
or some version of it.
We're playing a game of modified stock watch. Someone has to step up.
Yeah.
Someone has to be ready to play.
I agree with that.
So to me,
well, who do you think it's going to be?
I want it to be Jalen McLean because I think you need to have a true safety back there. And Jordan Hancock has played there a little bit in his career, but that's not like you put him back there and all of a sudden you don't have worries. It's not his normal position. So I guess I understand your point though, because you have a veteran back there who's played a little bit more football than you could potentially move Jermaine Matthews into the slot if you need to, or to the nickel back spot. So like I think you feel good about that, but there's been a reluctance, it seems, to move guys into different slots in the defensive alignment. So I don't know. I mean, this is where like you'd be like, man, if we could just watch one midseason practice, that'd be cool. But we can't.
We cannot.
Mid-season off week would have been the perfect time for it.
Yeah, it would have been pretty good. Well, not really.
I can't believe they didn't let us in here to watch practice.
I don't think we would have seen anything last week.
Yeah.
Heads rolling all over the place.
Sorry, that was my berm sarcasm meter. Was a little bit low. I'll try and step it up. Those are the spots, right? I mean, I'm not anticipating.
We're not missing anything.
I think that
O-line, tight end, safety.
I think there is a world where the defensive line could potentially see some fresh blood. I think someone like Edric Houston, this may be a time to activate. Now, I don't know. It seems I try to avoid this trap of say, oh well, this touted true freshman is here. It's time. Like why not? Why is he not on the field? Give him a run. What we've seen in the limited action has been pretty encouraging, and what we've seen from the rest of that group doesn't necessarily say you absolutely shouldn't try somebody else.
Again, we live in a world where you have to play these guys. You can't bring in a 5-star freshman from Georgia and not play him in the transfer portal world. It just doesn't make sense. So put him out there. See if you see the encouraging signs to keep him out there, fine. But you have to let him sink or swim at some point and say, here you go. What can you do? Because I guarantee you, there's people back home in Georgia saying, Edric, dude, for real? You could go to Clemson and be playing right now. Why? And you're not. So time to play.
Well, he can't go to Clemson. They don't take transfers.
Well,
Correct.
I bet they'd take him.
Be the ultimate test for Dabo.
I bet you they'd take him.
Maybe Georgia or South Carolina, but not Clemson.
I bet you Clemson would take him.
Probably.
Okay, that's the deal breaker.
He took an official visit to Clemson. I assume that they have a feeling for him. You know,
once you make your
I think
choice,
he's going to play well for Ohio State.
he's a great kid. Let him play this weekend is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's time. Like there's no excuses to just keep running the same guys out there ever, but especially now in this new realm of college football, but also especially when the guys you keep running out there are not being productive.
Well said.
All right. Well, that's going to wrap it up. It's a modified version of the Stock Watch. Thanks for joining us on a Wednesday for the Podcast Daily. We'll be back in here. Bill's going to be on Kings of the North. Don't want to miss it. We have Snap Judgments coming later. We'll be back in here today, Wednesday, to talk with, I think, Ohio State's captains and
Gut check time.
and Ryan Day and probably not much else. But whatever we hear, we will pass along on Snappy Jays later on. But this has been The Daily. He's Bill Landis. That's Jeremy Birmingham. I'm Austin Ward. We'll catch you later.